morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is Leslie Wyatt. I am the Director of Compliance with SoftPro. This is, believe it or not, our 16th episode of Saved You a Seat. Today, we are going to be talking about customizing your SoftPro Standard and Enterprise software. So this is generally for Standard and Enterprise users. Of course, if there's any Select users on the line, most of the stuff you see here, you can do. It just might be a different process. So per usual, we are going to get started here in a second, but I just wanted to kind of go over a few housekeeping things. One of which is if you have any questions, please type them in the question box, which should be to the right on your screen. Of course, it depends on how you have it set up. We will monitor them as Sarah is talking and try and ask her as many that we can. And if we don't get to them, then we will do a follow-up questionnaire document in our recap that we send out every week. And just a reminder for those of you that maybe haven't participated in these before, we do send out a recap, which also includes a recording of the session and any documentation that we think might be helpful to go along with it. And again, like I said, any questions that we might not have gotten to, we'll put in there. So please feel free to ask your questions, put in comments, whatever you need, and we will monitor them. So I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker today. Sarah Hay works with SoftPro. She is an implementation specialist. So she kind of goes through this a lot, and she graciously agreed to talk to us about it. So you guys, again, do not have to listen to me fumble my way through it. So she's going to just kind of highlight and talk about some customizing things that you can do within Standard and Enterprise that might help you guys be more efficient, get rid of some clicks, and just kind of make things a little easier. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sarah. And Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. So the first thing I wanted to start with is we do have two different versions of the software that we're talking about today. We are going to be working in our standard version of SoftPro, but some of you are probably on the Enterprise version or using the Enterprise version. And most of what we're going to hit today, we're going to be working in standard. So there's not a lot of differences between Enterprise and standard, but I'll highlight where there might be some differences. So the first thing I want to talk about today with customizing Standard and Enterprise is our SP Admin or SoftPro Administrator. SP Admin gives us the ability to create users, set permissions based on users, gives us the ability to add and modify file numbers. One thing that, and I'll touch on all of those here in a minute, but one thing I do want to mention for Enterprise users is right now we're seeing this cost centers as grayed out. Enterprise users do have the ability to modify cost centers as well or use cost centers. So you will see here in the upper left-hand corner, I have set up a couple different users in my database. My Sarah user, my test user. Looking at Sarah versus test, I set up just one different permission, honestly, between the two. Creating a new file versus not being able to create a new file. That gives us the ability to say, okay, maybe I have a post-closing department that only issues final policies. They don't need to be able to create new user or create new orders, but they do need to be able to edit the existing orders. So if I were to log into SoftPro, I would need to be able to get back there. I would log in however I needed to log in. PowerPoint's being a pain. So I can also set my file numbers through here as well. Setting the file numbers gives us the ability to create new orders. Using those new orders, order numbers, we would be able to modify whether that order number was year versus month versus sequence numbers. I can set it so that it'll reset every year or not. Leslie, I'm having a terrible time with this PowerPoint, getting it off of my screen so I can get to my desktop. Let me close this thing for now. All right, so let's say, for example, right now I have it set up so that it's going to show me a year, a month, and then 4 sequence numbers at the end of it. What that means is when I open SoftPro, and I log in, so I've got a couple different users set up. When I log in as Sarah, because we saw that Sarah had the ability to create a new order, Sarah can create a new order, and the sequence number, the order number, is going to automatically populate for me. You'll see here we've got the 4-digit year, the 2-digit month, and then a 4 sequence number at the end of that. When I say OK, the program is automatically populating it with some information that is already in the system. And that information is pulling in from templates. So one of the things that I just mentioned was permissions. I, as Sarah, have the ability to create a new file. What if I, as Sarah, or I log in as a different user and I don't have the ability to create a new file? So if I log in as test, which unfortunately means closing the program and reopening it to log in differently. Now, because I don't have that permission, if I try to create a new order, it's going to say, sorry, you can't do that. You don't have that ability. But I do still have the ability to open existing orders. So that's one of the big things that we can set up in SP Admin. Order numbers, if I were to modify my order numbers, user preferences as well. Everybody has separate user preferences. So if I wanted to say, okay, one person has the order tracking module, another one doesn't, I'm going to do that here in SP Admin. So like Sarah has the ability to use order tracking, test 1 does not. I took that permission away. So a lot of this just depends on what each user is going to be doing within their job role. Standard and enterprise permissions are all set up based on user permission. So we're not going to be able to create groups and then put those people into groups, but we can set them up on a user level, and we can copy permissions from one user to another. So if I were to add another user and say this is going to be test 2, I'm going to tell the program to copy a user level permission. So I can say, well, copy Sarah's permissions because Sarah has everything and this user is going to be in the same job role as Sarah. All right. That's basically SP Admin. There's not a lot here that we do on a daily basis. Most of this is information that we set as we go, or set up once and then, sorry about that, set up once and then keep it going. Our day-to-day stuff is mostly going to be in the program itself. I am going to log back in as Sarah so that I have the ability to do everything that I want to do with you guys today. Now, when I create a new order, you guys probably see down here at the bottom templates, and then a default template that pulls in, or a template you guys use. We have the ability to create new templates, to add new templates, to modify the templates that are existing. The rule of thumb that I like to throw out at people is 85%. If you're going to use information 85% or more of the time, put that information in your template. The more information you have in your templates, the less information you're going to have to type as you go. You guys probably all have existing templates in your system. I know I have a couple in here as well that I'm going to go ahead and open up. So if you're looking for your templates all need to have the extension PFT on the end of them. That tells the program these are template files, put them in the appropriate place, which we've got set up in SP Admin, and follow the appropriate rules. So I have a couple of templates in here. One is a CDF refi, one is a HUD purchase, one is a CDF purchase. When I create a new order, I'm going to choose my template based on my order type. So if I wanted a refi, I'm going to browse out to my refinance template, wherever it might be located on your system. and I'm going to pull in my refinance template. That gives me the ability to overlay the information that I have in that template, which is probably different than what's in the purchase template. For example, my CDF refinance template is going to overlay the optional page 3. So if I move into my CDF and look at my page 3, I have an optional page 3. Notice there's already some information in here. That information is pulling from those templates. So templates are basically boilerplates where information pulls from into a working order. I added a whole bunch of information in here or into my template so that we had it for informational purposes later. We can modify templates at any time. Template modifications will take effect on any orders you create after you make that template change. It's not retroactive, and that's because let's say you make a fee change down the road and you've already got orders in the system that we don't need that fee change to affect because they're already closed. That template change is not going to be retroactive. It's not going to change any orders that have already closed in the system or that have already been opened in the system. One of the orders, so I have an order here I do want to look at with you. This order has all of the different modules here across the top. We've got our general tab, order tracking. That is one of the items I did want to talk to you about today. Order tracking gives us the ability to have a checklist in the system. Checklist tasks, requested tasks. It gives us a way of tracking what we've done in the order. So for example, a checklist task would be something a milestone, something that we do internally. We have the ability here to template these items. So this all came in from a template that I had created. And I said, I need to prepare a deed. I need to prepare a commitment, and I need to prepare a final policy. All of these give me the ability to track when do I want it due, who's doing it. Leslie, I'm making sure that you're associated with some of these because I don't want to do them. So I've got my tasks. These are internal tasks. These are tasks that I'm doing internally. I'm not ordering them from somewhere. But I do have a different type of task called a requested task that these are items that I'm ordering from somewhere else. I order my title search from an abstractor down the street. They do all my work. I can tell the program I want to request this within a certain amount of time. And then once it's requested, I want it back within a certain amount of time after that request is placed. So when I place the request today, it now gives me a new due date. And it also says who placed the request. These are all items that you can set up. If you don't see the order tracking tab on your machine, it is an add-on. We can talk to our sales department about getting access to that for you. Another item that I did want to talk about are lookup tables. So in the program, we have multiple lookup tables. When you're in a field, you can always tell if a lookup table exists behind that particular field by looking here in the lower right-hand corner where it says LKUP. That LKUP indicates a lookup table. When I move my cursor to a different field that doesn't contain a lookup table, LKUP disappears. We have lookup tables in many places throughout the program. Most of the time, these are for information holders, places to store information. So for example, my lender. I probably work with the same lender over and over and over again. I don't want to retype that information 300 times because I see them 300 times in a year. I want to just pull that information in. So what I did here is I added the information to my order, but I haven't added it to my lookup table yet. How do I get it into my lookup table? All I have to do is I can press F9 on my keyboard, so function 9. I can right click and say lookup, or I can use Control L also on my keyboard. So we actually do have a keyboard shortcuts handout that can be given out if anybody needs it, if you don't have it. There's a bunch of function keys throughout the program that are very helpful. The F9 being one of those. So if I wanted to add Quarks Lending into my lookup table, I'm going to highlight it or press F9 in my lookup code field, and I'm going to highlight end of list and say insert entry. Anytime you enter new information into your lookup tables, you always want that information to show up at the end of the list because of the way the program is coded. Now, if I wanted to replace that information, oops, my address is wrong. I can modify my information in the screen. Again, press F9 on my lookup table, highlight the item that I want to replace, and say replace the entry. That's going to replace it, so next time I pull it, it's going to pull the proper information into my order. What if I wanted to modify a lookup table? So for example, I'm going to pop back to order tracking for this. We have existing lookup tables behind all of these description fields. The only thing these lookup tables hold, though, are the descriptions of what my tasks are going to be. I probably want it to hold more information. I probably want it to hold my item, the description, the status, when I want it due. So if I want to do that, I want to add to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the field codes for the items that I want it to contain. So for example, I want it to contain my status. Down here in the lower right-hand corner to the right of where you would see LKUP, you're going to see a field code, the CK01STAT. That is where our field codes are located, where we find our field codes. So I'm going to find all of the field codes that I want this table to maintain, and I'm going to add them to the table by pressing F9, where the lookup code exists, and saying modify table. So in this case, the only field that is being maintained by this lookup table is the description, that track item. If I want it to hold more information on this particular line, I'm going to add the information that I want it to hold. So in this case, I want it to hold the status, so it would be required. I want it to hold the assigned to, who I'm assigning it to, because Leslie's going to get all of these. I want it to hold the due date and the criteria, so what that due date is based on. Once I say OK to that, I'm going to see some columns appear across the top. So now I can see I've got my status, my assigned to, my due date, and my due date criteria. Cautionary tale here. If you already have multiple fields or multiple columns in a lookup table, please don't add into the middle of the lookup table. It will delete information that was already contained in that particular column. So just a cautionary tale there. But now I've got my structure modified. So I want to add this information into my lookup table. Press F9. I'm going to, in this particular case, I've already got it here, so I'm going to highlight prepare commitment, and I want to replace the entry. That means it's maintaining now all of that information that I have located in my order. So next time I try to use it and I pull it in from that lookup table, it's going to pull in all of that data. Now, I want all of these fields to be linked to that one lookup table. So in this particular case, they actually are already linked. You can see the table name, the CK what, that's the name. That's what links all of these tables together. But notice it didn't update my lookup table for the line 2. In order to do that, I would have to do this again, modify the table, add the criteria that I wanted stored. In this particular case, we want it to match essentially what we were doing before, and say OK. Once I do that, I think it takes a minute to think because it's doing a bunch of stuff in the background. Now I've linked my table to that number 1 line, and I've got it storing the same information. If I were on line 2 and I wanted to prepare my deed, same thing. I've already got a prepared deed in here somewhere. I'm going to highlight it and replace the entry because now I want it to maintain that information. So that's linking your tables together. You also have the ability to create new tables. So, for example, on my CV, what if I want to be able to store all of my payees? So you can see all this information pulled in from my templates. But let's say, for example, I have surveyors and I want to be able to store my surveyor information in my program, or I want to store homeowner's insurance payee information. I can do that in my CD by creating a new lookup table. In my CD, I would create a new lookup table by going behind the line, telling the program where I wanted to create that lookup table. So in this case, I want to create it on the payee line. So I'm going to press F9. It says a lookup table for this field does not exist. Do you want to add it? Of course I want to add it. I want to be able to store this information. But here's where it gets tricky, because we have to be able to tell the program what fields we want to maintain in this lookup table. So to that end, I'm going to add a structure. In this particular case, I want to store my payee, the street address, and the city, state, and zip. That's what I'm holding here. My table name is the charge to name, and I'm going to hit OK. So that gives me the ability to store State Farm. It gives me the ability to store Turning Point Survey or anybody else that I wanted to store as a payee. This particular lookup table would be available anywhere in the CD because of the way the CD functions. And you can create lookup tables, you can create custom lookup tables behind any field, and that field or that lookup table can store and link to whatever basically you wanted it to link to. It can be a little tricky figuring out what information you want to store in those fields and where you want it to populate. So anytime you have something like that and you want some assistance with it, please always give us a call. That's what we're here for. That pretty much takes us through lookup tables, order tracking. Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, can I ask a couple questions that came in regarding the lookup tables?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, first, I mean, I know you went over it, but somebody asked if the names, are in a separate lookup from the address and from the different fields. And I did answer and say, it depends on how it's set up. That you can have a lookup table individually if you want it in a field, or you can create access to a lookup table in a field and then pull in different field codes to create that table. Kind of like you just did for the CD, but several people asked that question. So I wanted to just ask you real quick if you could just show them again how to either add a field to a table, just so they know, clicking and then looking for the field code. Basically what you just kind of showed, if you could just show them real quick again, because we had a bunch of different questions come in regarding adding everything to one table.
Absolutely. So let's say I wanted to create a new table. I'm going to use these optional fields as my, my starting point. So when I want to create a new table, I'm going to press F9 in the field that I want to maintain the table in. In this particular case, it's on user 1 DES, which is the user 1 description field. Now I also want to maintain this value table. So that's going to be user 1 val. So you can see that field code here in the lower right-hand corner. So when I open this up, I'm going to say, okay, user 1 description, that's where I want it. But that's going to be my description field. So that's I'm going to give myself that column header as description because I want to know what that is. And then I also want that user val field, which is going to be the value field. Now, if I wanted to link this, I want, let's say, multiple lines in the user optional fields to link to this. I'm going to change the name of this table just to call it descriptions. And I hope you guys type better than I do, and I do apologize for that. So that gives me something to link it to. So now, if I hit OK, of course it doesn't like that. All right, so now I have my table. And the program is a little picky about what you use as descriptions for those. So now I've got my table, but now I want to link line 2 to it so that they're all available. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to press F9. I'm going to add the table. So that's going to be my description. So my user val, so user 2 val. But here's where this one gets tricky because automatically it pops up with that table name. So now I want to change that. I want to make sure I go and find the table that I had set up there. And now I don't remember what I called. Descriptions, there we go. So I'm going to link it by using that. So I have to change that table name in order to link it. Please do not consider this a typing lesson. As I said, I can't type. So now I've linked those. So if I wanted to add information here, I can. I'm going to add it to my lookup table. So I'm going to highlight the end of list, insert entry. And then if I go to line 2, it's still available because I've linked those 2 lines together in that lookup table. Does that answer that question?
It does. That was very helpful. So, you know, just to recap for everybody, just because a lot of people have questions, you can, just like Sarah said, you can essentially have a table anywhere and you can add whatever field codes in it. That's what comprises the table. And then when you're recreating them for lines that have repetitive information, like she just showed you right there, you can link it to the original one. So you're only adding or modifying or maintaining that table one time. So I think that was great. Another question that we had come in, because you were talking about order tracking, is somebody wants to know, does the task have to be assigned to a person or can we assign it to a department? And actually, this is a really good question because you were talking about SP admin earlier. And I was wondering if you could kind of just talk about or show them how you can create users as a department, you know, and then put people in there so that they can use order tracking to assign it to not just an individual user or an order or to an actual department.
So unfortunately, in standard and enterprise, we don't really have the ability to set up a department per se. We do have this lookup table here that you can add multiple people to. And we also have the ability to run reports. So if you wanted to give your users the ability to run a report so that they can monitor a particular queue, we could set up in that lookup table teams. So we could have closers, and we could have post closers, and then your users could run the report they needed to run for whichever queue they needed to look at.
That's perfect. That would definitely answer their question. So also someone else says, does a reminder pop up in order tracking feature? And if so, where will they see it? And you kind of just answered the one about running a report, but I'll let you go ahead and answer that and explain it.
Very good question, actually. So we're not going to get a pop-up reminder in order tracking, but when we're in order tracking, we do see here in the lower left-hand corner that there are tasks in this order that are due. So we have a couple different ways to look at that. If we're in an order and we want to see, okay, I actually have a past due task in here because it says it's past due, I can look at my order to figure out within my tasking to see what is past due, and there's my exclamation point. Prepare the deed is past due. Renee didn't do her job, or at least she's behind. So I can look at that, or I can run the report and say, all right, I need to find out who's behind on a particular task. This reports button comes with the order tracking module. Does that answer that question?
It does, and I will add to that the report comes with order tracking, like Sarah said, but you also can modify it or have SoftPro modify it to run specifically for specific, you know, tasks and whatnot. If you don't want it as is, you can certainly have it customized, because I know a lot of customers do that.
Absolutely.
Another question regarding order tracking says, when adding due dates to an item on a checklist, how are you notified that things are due? Is it a pop-up in the file open, or is there a report? And I think you just answered that with, you can run the report daily or whenever you want, and you know, you can obviously run it across all order tracking items. You can order, you know, past due, due, a specific item. So I think you pretty much just answered that as well.
Awesome.
And
I
think for right now, that is not. Oh, someone asked how they could get a copy of the keystroke shortcuts, and that's a great question. And we will include that in the recap of this session, along with, we also have a kind of how to create lookup tables job aid. We can also include in that as well, so that we can, you guys have that. one other thing that I was going to ask Sarah is when you were talking about templates and you went through how to create one or how to bring one in for a file, a question that we get a lot is, you know, I'm already in a file and something changes, or let's say something doesn't change. Let's say it's a refi or a purchase, but then when the lender comes in, it's, you know, XYZ lender and for this particular property. And a lot of people ask, can they use multiple templates and can they overlay them into open files?
Absolutely. So all of the above. One of the great examples of that is an underwriter template. So let's say, for example, you work with multiple underwriters. Well, if I'm working with multiple underwriters, each underwriter probably has different standard requirements and different standard exceptions. So I would create, let's say I'm working with Fidelity and Old Republic, which actually I think those are the two that I have in this particular system. I would create an underwriter template for Old Republic and an underwriter template for Fidelity. And then once my order is open, I do have the ability to apply that template. Pretty easy to do. All I would do at that point is I would use my overlay feature. So my overlay feature here in the ribbon is this big blue button. So if I wanted to throw another template on top of this, I'm going to click the overlay or file template. This actually is a good question for templates, but it's also a good question for somebody who's come back like a multiple time customer or client. I'm going to find the order that I want to overlay into it. So in this particular case, let's say I wanted to throw my CD purchase template over it again. So I'm going to find my CDF purchase template and I'm going to apply it just by double clicking or highlighting it and saying apply. That is going to overlay that information again. Unfortunately, I didn't have any new information in this particular one. But yes, you absolutely can apply multiple templates. You would just do that after the fact. You would apply your base template first when you create your order. So choose your template there. So if it was a HUD, you would use your HUD template. Or if it's a CD, you would use your CD template. If you needed to browse out for your refinance template. And then once you've got your order open, at that point, you could apply that other template by using that overlay feature. Now, one thing about the overlay feature is we do have an option, also an SP admin option, to either apply the entire order / template or to ask you to choose which options you want. If you want the general, title insurance, property information. So we do have that ability as well. I don't have that particular item set up on this database, but we do have that option. So you can choose what you overlay. Does that answer that question?
I think so. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And
awesome.
We're going to let you continue on now. I just had a bunch coming in on that stuff you were talking about, so I thought I'd jump in there, but continue on.
Absolutely. So lookup tables, I'm just going to throw this back because obviously I spent a lot of time on lookup tables. Lookup tables are, I'm a bit of a nerd and they're fun for me. So I love lookup tables. The next thing I want to talk about are documents. Over here on the right-hand side, your Ready Docs. So you guys probably all see different document trees in your setup. So in this case, I have an Old Republic tree, I have my South Carolina state documents, I have some Fidelity docs, and I have my SoftPro tree. Well, I don't generally want to have to go digging through all of these documents when I know I'm probably going to need a commitment, a deed, policy, and a CD, right? So we have this user Ready Doc tree that's here for you to use however you please. You can put whatever documents on it you want. So I started by just adding a CDF purchase, an Old Republic, and a Fidelity commitment. This user Ready Doc tree is user-based. So in this particular case, I'm logged in as Sarah. If I make a change to this tree, test one isn't going to see that change. If you guys are all working under the same login, so for example, a lot of smaller customers don't change the permissions. They just leave everybody logging in the same. They would be visible. That change would be visible across the board. But if you have separate logins like what I did for today, you would not see the same thing across the board. So I want to make changes to this tree. I want to add documents to this tree. How would I do that? I'm going to go to my Tools menu and go to Ready Docs Manager. Once I'm in my Ready Docs Manager, from there, I can add whatever I want to this tree, and I can do what I want with it. So I want to add a CDF refinance to the tree. So wherever I want it in the user tree. I'm going to say insert new folder and name it. From there, the documents on the left-hand side in the Ready Docs tree, I can drag and drop into the CDF Refinance folder or whatever folder I want. If it's something that needs to come out of one of the trees on the right-hand side, I want to copy and paste. If I drag and drop, I'm actually removing them from the original tree, which I don't really want to do. So from the SoftPro tree, I'm going to find my CDF Refinance. There's my Refinance. I'm going to drag and drop the pages that I want into my Refinance folder. Now, generally speaking, I probably don't always want the 2A and 2B, so I'm not going to pull those in. I'm going to skip them and go to page 3, 4, and 5. What does that mean? That means I now have pages 1 through 5 of my CDF Refinance in my Ready Docs tree. What if I want 2A and 2B over there? I just don't want them in that folder. I can put them loose underneath there. What benefit does this have for me? Obviously, when I go to view a document and hotspot back and make changes to it, that changes it on the right-hand side. So if I hit OK, I've now got this new information in my tree. But it also helps when you go to print your documents. So if I go to print and I go to my SoftPro tree and I say I want to print that CDF page 5, or CDF Refinance, if I drag and drop the whole thing over, I'm going to get all of those pages, including 2A and 2B and the addendum. What if I don't want those? If I haven't set up that ReadyDocs user tree, I have to literally go back and say, well, I don't want these, or I'm getting additional documents that I don't want. Whereas if I have my user tree set up, I can drag and drop that new tree that I created that's only got the 5 pages in it, and I don't have to worry about additional documents that I have to remove. So that's one of the big benefits of using the ReadyDocs Manager. I mentioned that with the user tree, anything that's on the right-hand side, we do have to copy and paste. So if I wanted a loan policy under here, I highlight my user tree, insert the new folder, and I'm going to say loan policy. Now I'm going to find the policy I want. So in this particular case, I'm going to say I want the Old Republic loan policy. I'm going to find the document, copy it, and then paste it into that loan policy tree. I'm going to do that with each page, and unfortunately this is a page by page. You can't do multiple pages at a time. I heard some of you thinking it. So now I've got my loan policy. This is my Old Republic policy. If I want to rename a tree, like, whoops, that should be Old Republic because I pulled the Old Republic documents in there, I can highlight it and say edit and make that my Old Republic loan policy. When I say OK, I've added to my tree. So this is a really, really good feature, especially for, let's say you had buyer docs that you always print all together, seller docs that you always print all together. You can create a buyer doc tree and a seller doc tree so that when you go to print them, you can print them all at once or create a PDF out of them all at once. The other thing that you have the ability to do in Standard and Enterprise is create documents in Word and merge them into the program so that when you render them from the program, it's pulling all of the data that you have in your program. So in this particular case, I have a bunch of information in the order, and I have a document already created. This is how we format, and we do have job aids on merge documents as well, so if anybody's interested in this, we can send those out. I have a couple different formatting options in here just because I wanted to demonstrate that for you. So this first one, we always open field code, prompt, anything like that using curly brackets, and we have to close it also with curly brackets. This CHAR tells the program to prompt for that particular information. And then this is the information I want when it prompts me. Then I'm going to give the program some field codes. So same thing, open with curly brackets, close with curly brackets. And then I'm going to find the field code for the information that I want. So if I go back to the program, for this particular letter, I said I want all of the information from this field, which is my buyer comma field. So that's what's going to populate when I render the document. And then buyer 1, address 1, buyer 1, address 2. So same thing, I pulled my field code from my buyer 1. So buyer 1 would be the number 1 buyer in the order. If I did buyer 2, it would be buyer 2. There's my field code for the street address, buyer 1, address 1. There's my field code for the city, state, and zip portion of that. And then here's some even different formatting. So this tells the program to pull the first buyer information, but I only want the last name. So whatever information I have in this field, it's going to separate it out and only give me the last name of that particular buyer. And then same thing, another field code for the firm name in case you have multiple settlement agents, for example. Well, now I've got my document done. How do I render it? So first things first, we have to add it to the program. So to add the document into the program, we would use our Tools Manager again for MS Word documents. And I'm going to open that up. From there, I'm going to make my trees. So in this particular case, there's my tree. And to insert the document, I would go Insert Document. Here, it's going to take me into the Templates folder of SoftPro because that's where we've been working so far today. I'm going to go back to the root, and I'm going to find my Merge folder. That's where I have already put that document to render, and this is where we store this. And again, the handout does go through this with you pretty good detail, I think. Initially, I'm not going to see it, and that's because the program is looking for the out-of-the-box merge docs that we have in here. So I'm going to change that to all files. And then I'm going to scroll until I find the document that I created, which is right there. And I'm going to open, and then I'm going to name it. So in this case, one of the things we do have to do is we have to change this string. The document path tells the program where to look for this document. In this particular case, it's looking directly into my SoftPro merge folder. But the problem with that is what happens if I get a new server or upgrade. I want this document, I want the program to look wherever that merge folder might be. So to that end, I am going to change that path with a %mergeder %. Keep the name. That tells the program to follow that document wherever it goes. And I'm going to make it unrestricted because I want this document available no matter where I am in the program. If I were to choose order tracking, the only way I'd be able to render the document is if I was in the order tracking module, for example. Same thing with title insurance. I would have to render it while I was in the title insurance. If I unrestrict it, I can be anywhere and render it. Once I hit OK, it's added it to my merge tree. Now, how do I get to my merge tree so that I can render that document? It's not showing up in ReadyDocs because it's a different type of document. Merge docs are documents that you've created in Word. ReadyDocs are documents that SoftPro's created in our RDW format. They cannot be merged. They can't be put into the same tree. But we've given you this really cool little Word button here in the ribbon that you can use to render those documents. You also have the ability to go to the File button and say MS Word Merge. Either one is going to take you to this menu, which looks just like your ReadyDoc print menu. Find the document you want to render, pull it over just like you were printing it, and you're going to say, OK. That is going to render the document in Word. In this particular case, it's not because I already had it open. But there it goes. So that is the prompt that I had for the date. So if I wanted to type in my date, and now you can see there's my date that I just entered. There's the information that I had in the order from that field code. Pulled in just his last name because that's what I wanted there. And it pulled in my settlement agent information. You can do this with things as simple as a letter, an engagement letter, or a letter you want to send out to your customers for presenting policies. you can do it with something as difficult or as more complicated as a deed. So this is across the board. You can pretty much do it with anything, any document. We do have handouts that we can send out for that. I think that pretty much takes care of everything I wanted to go over today. I know SPM was a little bit clunky.
I have some questions regarding the docs. Oh, first one is someone asked, can I as a user change my own Ready Docs tree?
As a user, you can change the tree, yes. As a user, you cannot change the document itself. If you change the Ready Doc tree, depending on how you log in, that may change the tree for everybody else.
Okay, so another question is, you had mentioned when you were setting it up, but when you make that change, obviously it was just for you, right? It wasn't for, say, me, because it was under how you logged into SoftPro. And they want to know if there is a way that you can set up the documents tree for everybody one time instead of having to go into each user.
Unfortunately, that is going to be dependent on how you're set up. So if you are set up so that everybody is using the same login across the board. So when we were in SP admin, you guys saw that I had sorry, it takes a second for this to come up because I closed it. When I'm in SP admin, I have multiple users. Sometimes people don't change that. Sometimes people don't have permissions set and different user preferences set. So if that's the case and you were to make changes to the user tree, that would go across the board because everybody's logging in as the same user. In this particular case, I was logged in as Sarah and I made the changes as Sarah. If I go back and I log in as test one, and I open that order. So again, I don't have the ability to create new orders because I permission that out. But if I open the existing order, you will see now that that change does not, oh, it did actually go across the board. I apologize. Yes, if you make changes to that tree, it will be available for everybody.
Okay, great. Someone else, this is actually lookup tables, but they said they were having an issue, and I don't know if it's something you might be able to help with, but it says within lookup tables, identifying attorney information, she has a problem with the correct information importing into the CD. All is fine when I use it for a HUD. You have to create separate lookups for each attorney for each type of settlement statement.
So that sounds like there might be an issue with the link between the different settlement types. Each settlement type, we have to create the table in each settlement type. So the table has to be created in a CD order type. The table would have to also be created in the HUD settlement type, and they would have to be linked, just like we were talking about in these user optional fields when we link these. So to make that happen, we might have to have support take a look at that if it's not linking between the two.
Okay. Okay, as someone, that makes sense. And yeah, that makes perfect sense, is to create it in the type of file that you want to use it in, and then link them. So, because there are different fields. So we can take a look at that.
Correct.
And I know who you are, so we'll reach out to you. Somebody wanted to know if you could go back into the CD tab and show us real quickly again how to put a lookup table so that name and address appears.
Sure. So that name and address is in your payee field. So you can do that from any line within CD page 2. You would open up your detail field, press F9 in your payee, and then it would ask you if you wanted to create the table, but I just created this, so it's already there. And then this is the structure that we would need to use for that.
Okay, perfect. And just so for anybody asking about how to create tables, we will include the job aid, like Sarah mentioned, in our recap email so that you have it with you, and it kind of goes through step by step when you're creating it. So it's pretty straightforward, and you'll have a job aid there that you can reference. And someone else wants to know how they can create a new template.
Good question. That is something I glossed over, and I will go back. So if I wanted to create a new template, and I am going to log back in as myself because test 1 is not going to have the ability to do that. I'm going to perform the action just like I was going to create a new order, but here in the new order button or screen, I have a template button. When you create a new template, you're going to name it however you want to name it, but here's the caveat. You must put the .pft at the end of it. That tells the program this is a template file and put it in the appropriate place, which is all based on user settings. So one thing you have to do, check the template box or check the template radio button, name it, and then put the .pft at the end of it. Once you do that, if you wanted to use, like I would use my CDF purchase probably as my basis for this new template because there's a lot of information in it. Or you don't have to. You don't have to use a template as the basis. You can also, if I wanted to make this another refinance template, I would browse out to my refinance template, wherever that may be on my system, and then say, okay. Once I do that, it's going to create the new template. So if I were to go looking for this template, so like it's got my settlement agent information in here. If I were to go looking for it, I would now find it because I created it in my templates folder because I named it with a .pft and I called it a template.
We can also include a job aid on creating templates. Someone else said, can we include the word merge? I said, absolutely. Somebody asked, how do you add multiple signature lines and affidavits when you have multiple sellers? And I just want to clarify that it depends on if you're doing a word merge doc, I'll let you explain, or if it's a SoftPro ready doc. So one is going to be, to our documents team, and one, if it's word merge, can be done on your own. But I'll let you answer that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So if I was creating that document and I wanted multiple signature lines instead of just the one, in the order, I have the ability to go back and find my signature. So I'm still in my template. That's not going to be helpful. I'm going to go back to my order. And I am going to code for multiple signatures. So I want the signature. So I'm going to click on the More button and find my signature lines for the one. And there's my signature line. So BYRSIG is my coding, my field code for the signature line for the buyer, for buyer one. I'm going to do the same thing. Let's say I wanted my seller on my document as well. So I'm going to say, now I'm going to go find my field code for my seller, signature line. Now this is the signature line for all of your buyers and sellers. So if you code for this on your document, it's going to pull in all of the different buyers and sellers that you have. So you can see here I've got two separate. So I've got William Riker and I've got Jordy LaForge as buyer one and seller one and seller two. When I go to my signature lines, they're both pulling in. So if I code for that on my document, so if I were to say, got curly brackets, BYRSIG, and then over here I want RSIG, that's how I would code for those signature lines to pull for all buyers and all sellers. So if I wanted to split that up, that gets a little bit more complicated.
I'm sorry, I'm reading some of these questions. They're quite comical. Like they're trying to be funny, not that they're silly questions. They're great questions. Yeah, so I do really want to reiterate that if you're not using merge documents, meaning you want changes to your SoftPro ready docs, you can simply call support or your sales rep, and we can get the documents team to contact you and make any necessary changes or anything like that, any customizations to the forms for you. So speaking of docs and docs teams and updates, I do want to quickly mention in the last couple minutes here that we have a documents portal, and we have, we update documents. So whenever there's changes to, say, the canned documents that come in SoftPro, we definitely update them. It's obviously up to you guys to get them and download them. We send out alerts, we send out emails. So just be on the lookout for those. And if you notice you have a document and you don't think it's the latest and greatest, just reach out to us or go to our website. It's pretty easy to navigate to get to them. So just know that we are constantly updating them. and we have them there for you guys. So I think that's it for the questions. If you want to pop up those last slides, we're going to end like we always do. And if you can't pop the slides up, don't worry, it'll be in the recording. We're going to go ahead and end like we always do with a quick recipe. I, as you all know, love to cook, and we decided early on, since everybody was home, and people really seem to like it and email me a lot and tell me what they've tried and haven't tried. So if you do try something, please let me know. I love hearing about it. But this time I kept it easy. It's one of my favorites. Penne alla vodka, it's super easy. You can, omit anything you don't like in here. Everything in here is delicious. I didn't do a specialty drink because I usually just drink it with my favorite red wine, which in this case would be a Chianti. But again, if you have any questions on recipes, on anything to do with SoftPro, anything that we went over today with Sarah, please feel free to reach out. If we can't answer the question, we will most definitely put you in touch with someone that can. And we will do a recap. We will include some of the job aids. I made notes for the ones everyone asked and that Sarah referenced. And we will go ahead and get that out in the next day or two. So please be on the lookout for that. And I want to say a special thank you to Sarah. This was great. I think people really learned a lot. We had a lot of really good questions. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So, of course, absolutely. So with that, I'm going to send everybody back. Get out there and vote. Have a great day. Be safe. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.